This video is going to be all about how to do burst damage. And the reason that I'm making this video is because I'm sure a lot of people out there are wondering how you get those giant turns. Defeating the villain in one turn and one massive burst of damage can be extremely useful and will get you a lot of wins that you might not get, because oftentimes advancing the villain's stage will make things a lot harder because the villain's stronger. So you don't really want to advance the villain's stage before you're ready to take them out. So ideally, you'll just be able to take out the hardest stage of the villain in one turn. But how do you do that? So let's go over all the things that you need for a one-shot. This list is not in order necessarily. They're just different things that you can do to pull off the one-shot. So one way is storing damage. An example of that is allies. Another thing is if you're going to play a lot of cards in one turn, you need to have a high economy. And then counting your cards, you need to make sure that you know when your big attack events and key cards are in your deck, so that you know if you can go for the one shot or not. And then you have to be able to control the board so you don't lose before you get to that point. And then the biggest thing, and maybe this is the most important thing to take away from the video, is to identify when you actually have enough damage to take out the villain. Because it might surprise you sometimes, especially if you build your deck around having a bunch of damage for the villain. It's really easy to miss when you can actually just one-shot the villain. So make sure to count the damage you have. And also, you'll get a better intuition for when you have the damage just with the more games you play, and especially if you play one hero many times. So here's some different types of one-shots. I think Captain Marvel does a great job of exemplifying storing damage with her energy channel. SpiderMan, since his main source of damage is a swinging web kick, you're probably going to want to go more into allies and card counting so that you know when you're going to draw into your swinging web kick and when you won't. And then StarLord is a great example of using combos to one-shot, and that one's much more complicated. So I'm going to go over Captain Marvel and Spider-Man first, and then StarLord at the end. So starting with Captain Marvel, let's say you're fighting Claw, and Claw on stage 3 has 22 health and a tough status card, so that's a lot to get through. But if you just work backwards and figure out what do you actually need. You need to knock off the tough status card. So Spider-Woman can do that, for instance. And then you need to do 22 damage after that. So if we just attack for 2 with Captain Marvel, that brings him down to 20 health. And then each photonic blast will do 5. So if you can play 2 of those, that's 10 damage, bringing him down to 10 health. And your energy channel, after you get 5 counters on energy channel, you can discard it and deal 10 damage to the villain. So right there, with just these cards that are already in her kit, that's enough to completely one-shot the last stage of Claw. And her economy is really high, and you can see that she has a lot of card draw as well. So it's not actually that difficult to do. If you get just energy channel down with 5 counters, you get 1 ally out, and then you hold on to a photonic blast. As soon as you see any other source of damage, you can pretty much just take out the villain. And then Spider-Man, here's an example. I wanted to use Rhino. So Rhino 3 has 16 health, tough, and stuns the hero. So let's say you're in this situation where he's tough and you're stunned. So you'll have to do a basic attack to get rid of your stun, so you won't get your 2 damage there. And then Black Cat, though, has 1 attack, and Black Cat is really, really good at knocking off tough status cards. After that, if you just are able to play Swinging Web Kick, you'll get to deal 8 damage to Rhino twice, and that's 16 damage. So, with Spider-Man against Rhino, for instance, you'll be able to just, as long as you have Black Cat out, and you have 2 Swinging Web Kicks in hand, and you have a way to afford them, then you can do that. And that's actually not as difficult as it sounds like it would be. So Spider-Man will have 6 cards in his hand, likely, because he draws a card when the villain attacks him. So if you have 6 cards in your hand, 4 of those are going to have to go to the first Swinging Web Kick, and then you'll have 2 left over. So you'll need to find 2 other resources, essentially. So Avengers Mansion Helicarrier, and having that on the board. And then if you just see 1 double resource, it's not hard to play 2 Swinging Web Kicks. So even though it seems like it would be, if you're doing the strategy of building up your board state, you get economy supports onto the table, then Spider-Man can very easily afford 2 Swinging Web Kicks in 1 turn. So when you're thinking about this, it's important to identify for each villain. So Rhino here is kind of a specific example, but when you face a villain, just make sure you identify what the conditions are you need to meet. And then when you can meet those conditions, then you go for it, and you can just one-shot the villain. And even with just the core box, I have a video on my channel doing exactly this with Spider-Man and taking out Rhino in 1 stage because I held on to 1 Swinging Web Kick until I knew that there was 1 left in my deck and I could draw into it on the next turn, and then I took out Rhino in 1 turn. So now let's move on to StarLord. So StarLord is the combo hero that I'm bringing up. So he's going to have to incorporate the elements of Captain Marvel and Spider-Man from this example, plus a lot more. So let's get into that. So StarLord is amazing at doing burst damage and one of my favorite heroes to do it on. I have a video on my channel where I was playing with Web Warrior Fanatic against Ronin on expert mode. And in that video, I was able to do 103 damage in one turn with StarLord. And that was against a really high pressure scenario. And that's just because StarLord can combo so well. So let's go over it. This is kind of like a bare minimum combo. So the idea here is you want to use the element gun, play 2 sliding shots, 2 daring escapes, and Blaze of Glory. And that seems like it might be really difficult to get all that to line up, but later on I'm going to talk about how to make this more consistent. And I promise this is actually a pretty common occurrence to have something similar to this with StarLord. So if we think about that damage, Blaze of Glory is going to increase StarLord's attack by 2. Also, it works on all Guardian characters, and since he makes all allies a Guardian, that'll increase the damage of all of your allies. But we're not thinking about allies right now. So with just StarLord, if you can play Blaze of Glory, attack for 4, play Daring Escape, get a face down counter card, ready your hero and draw a card, attack for another 4, play another Daring Escape, draw 4, attack for 4 again. So that's 12 damage right there. And then at that point, you're going to have 2 Daring Escapes out for your sliding shot, or 2 encounter cards face down in front of you from your Daring Escapes. So then you can pay for one of your sliding shots with another encounter card. So then you have 3. So each of your sliding shots will be doing an additional 2 damage for each encounter card. So that means that each one will do 11 damage. And then the element gun has 3 damage with piercing. So if you put all that together, you get 3 damage from the element gun. You play 2 sliding shots for each for 11. And with your basic attacks, you can get 12 damage. And that comes out to 37. And that's 37 damage at the minimum. If you have even one ally, and often you'll have more than that with StarLord, that damage can go crazy. And that's how I got that damage so high in that game against Ronin. Another thing you can do with StarLord that I didn't include in this is you can time your final push around when your deck runs out, so you get another encounter card in front of you. So this would actually add 4 more damage. So that would bring it all the way up to 41 with just this one combo with StarLord. But let's work backwards. So we have to figure out how are we actually going to afford all of this. So if we just look at the effective resources of what all of this costs, the element gun is going to need a resource. The sliding shots are 3 printed costs, plus that the card itself has to leave your hand. So each of those is 4. The Daring Escapes are 0 because you get to draw cards with them. So it's a 0 cost card, leaves your hand, but you also get to draw. So those are actually free cards. And then Blaze of Glory is 2 cost plus the 1 for itself leaving a hand. So that's 3. So when we add all that up, we need to find a way to get 12 effective resources. So with resource costs that high to pull this off, we need to have a strategy to do that. So let's talk about how to afford it. So I'm going to go over what StarLord has available to him here. So the first thing is Bad Boy. So if you have your starting hand of 5, Daring Escape is going to let you draw into cards. These are the 5 cards that you need. 2 sliding shots, 2 Daring Escapes, Blaze of Glory, and an element gun already on the table. So when you use Bad Boy, it says when you take any amount of damage from the villain's attack, discard this card, prevent all of that damage, change to alter ego form, and draw 2 cards. So that will allow you to get 2 extra cards into your hand that you can start using as resources. Another thing you can do is use the Black Panther ally to store Blaze of Glory under Black Panther. And that is really good because then, one, you don't have to draw into Blaze of Glory, so it removes that requirement. And then it removes it from your hand, meaning you'll have 1 more free slot. And then the helmet can give you a card. So if you deal yourself an encounter card the turn before, then you can get an extra hand size from that. So that's yet another card that you can get from that. And then both the Daring Escapes are going to give you cards. So then this is all of the resources that you'll have available to you to start spending. And then also we don't want to forget the What Could Go Wrong ability can just straight up afford a sliding shot. So now let's start assigning the resources. So these 2 cards on the right over here can pay for the Blaze of Glory. Let's say 1 goes into the element gun. And then these 3 can go into the sliding shot. 1 sliding shot, and then StarLord's ability can pay for this sliding shot. And this is assuming that you have no doubles out and no resource generators. It's still possible. So this, if you just are aware that the combo exists in your deck and you start playing around it to where you count how many sliding shots are left in my deck, and then you look at your Daring Escape. So for instance, let's say you only have one Daring Escape, but you don't have that many cards left in your deck. You can go for the combo just then because you might be able to draw into it. And there's a bunch of other tools that you can add to get that consistency. So with just like, let's say one Daring Escape and Bad Boy is on the table, it's already 3 card draw that can help you find the Daring Escape and the 2 sliding shots. And plus you can hold these in your hand to prepare for this big turn. And this is possible, but is it consistent? Your deck build is what's going to make this consistent. So here's some tools that you can use to improve the consistency. So first, just having double resources like the power of leadership and strength and energy and genius, that's going to make it way easier to meet the requirement. Because that example I gave before is assuming no double resources. So if you have just 1 or 2 double resources, that makes it a lot easier already. Black Panther, we went over, can store the key event, Blaze of Glory, that you need. Make the call. Let's say you can play Make the Call and get Black Panther out of the discard pile the turn before and then store the event. Stuff like that's possible. Rapid Response can start bringing your allies back into play. And then if you have cards like Nick Fury, for instance, Nick Fury is great to Rapid Response, gets you 3 more cards. Helicarrier and Avengers Mansion, just resource generators along with Enhanced Awareness can get you more cards. Ironheart can get you more cards. Gamora especially is really good because after Gamora attacks or thwarts, you discard cards from the top of the deck until you get an event. So she'll help you just like straight up find what you need, and you can use Rapid Response and Make the Call with her to get multiple activations. So for instance, let's say Gamora has 1 health and you're fighting Ronin. So Ronin on stage 3 has Retaliate. So Ronin, after she attacks once, she'll search an event. You can Rapid Response her back in, and then she can attack again because she's ready when she comes back in play. So then she has 1 damage on her as well, and then that defeats her because she had 1 consequential from the Rapid Response, and then 1 damage from the Rapid Response, and then she takes a consequential plus Retaliate, so she's defeated again, and then you can Make the Caller and then get her again. And it just, you see, there's so many ways that you can keep getting bonuses out of that. And then also, you got to put in perspective that with this build, Blaze of Glory is going to mean Gamora is attacking for 4 every time. So even if you only get 1 of your sliding shots or something like that, that's going to be really good. And then cheap cards like Ironheart that StarLord makes a Guardian are great for this because you get to draw a card, and then Ironheart has 3 attack when you play Blaze of Glory. So there's a lot to go into this. So I have a deck list up for StarLord, and if you look at that deck list, that deck is kind of showing you an example of how I took some tools to improve the consistency of a combo that I like. And there are way more cards than just this. These are just some of the first ones that came to my mind for improving the consistency of this combo, but there's a lot more that you can do. And I wanted to mention here at the end of the video some other heroes that can do combo bursts really well. So I don't want to say exactly how they do it because I think it'd be fun if you don't already know how they do it. These are great heroes to pull out and try to figure out a way to do it. So SpiderMan Miles Morales has a lot of cool ways he can do it. Jubilee with her grand finale, a lot of fun stuff to do there. Iron Man has all of his tech upgrades. And yeah, that I don't want to spoil any of these. And X-23 readies a lot. So the little hints here. You can try to increase the damage of Jubilee's cards. You can try to figure out a way to play multiple of Spider-Man's cards in the correct order to get the max benefit out of them. Iron Man can get a lot out of his 1-cost attack event and readying. And X-23 has a couple ways to ready a bunch of times in 1 turn. Yeah, and that brings me to the end of it. I hope this was enjoyable for you and that it inspires you to try to do some burst damage. And if you learned something from the video, or you try out doing some burst damage and it works, or if it doesn't work, let me know in the comments. I like to hear how everyone's games go. And yeah, if you like the video, like and subscribe. Stay zesty, and I'll see you next time.